What we're seeing in these cities like Portland or Seattle or Albuquerque is a conjunction of individuals who are leaving higher education and being vomited up as heartless anarchists. So this, to my mind, and I'm curious as to your perspectives, has suddenly no longer become about George Floyd. A lot of these individuals can't articulate what their particular demands are, but you have to kind of follow the bouncing ball here. And you've written about the failure of civics and government programs in our K through 12 grades. The National Association of Educational Placement scores were at 25% functionality for these kids in 8th grade, even knowing something workable about our country's own history. But you've got K through 12 ideology, which leads into collegiate progressivism, which produces groupthink, which germinates anarchists that destroy cities. So really at bottom, to my mind, and particularly because we see this groupthink so ironclad, so narrow and unmoving, unforgiving in higher education, there seems to be this real correlation of the belief comes first, and then the toppling, the rioting, the destruction, the lawlessness comes second. Do you see that connection?
Oh, 100%. I think there's absolutely no doubt. So you've got two things happening at the same time, which are equally destructive. The first is we are not teaching our founding anymore.
Yes.
No, young Americans don't understand what was so revolutionary in the thinking of the founders. I mean, the very idea that you create a nation built on an idea, for one thing, and that the idea is not only that all men are created equal, that's monumental in itself, but that we will govern ourselves. Those two things in particular. I mean, you can also talk about the importance of natural rights, and we should, but I think today these are the important issues. So we're not teaching that, right? Kids don't understand what was so special about America, and in fact, even what the founding documents say anymore. So you've got that on the one hand, and then what's been equally destructive is the fact that we have replaced content-based civics with what's called action civics. Action civics is all about teaching kids to go out and protest. Now, it's interesting because the argument was your grandmother's civics aren't interesting anymore. It's not teaching kids properly, so we think it needs to be activity-based, engagement, action-based. This is what's going to interest kids, and it's nonpartisan. But the reality is, and Texas Public Policy Foundation has done terrific research on this, the reality is not only have the kids lost their civic education, so in fact your grandmother's civics was more effective in teaching civics, but it's also creating groupthink because they claim to be nonpartisan, but research on action civics shows that the vast majority of the issues that kids are going out and demonstrating for are progressive issues or partisan leftist issues. And the problem is it creates exactly what you described, which is groupthink. People aren't taught, like, what are the ideas here? They're not taught the foundational ideas. They're simply taught, go out, be passionate about something, and demonstrate for it.
Yes. Absolutely. As opposed to, let's put in place concrete working principles. And history, though flawed, is history. It is important to a foundational understanding of who we are as Americans. And listen, as you know, we're a relatively young constitutional republic. We have a history that has propelled us into the position we are pleased and gifted enough to occupy right now. We've talked a lot about China on this show. What a study in contrasts between what autocratic rule really looks like as a communist party and the freedom we have here in America to protest in the streets. Now, that protest does not extend to toppling monuments, but again, I'm seeing this conjunction of not only what we're teaching, but who is teaching it. And we have found that there is a distinct connection between mob rule, anarchy, Antifa, and college professors. In fact, University of Alabama, Birmingham, in the midst of a lot of violent rioting, particularly in D.C., and on the same night that rioters set fire to our D.C. historic St. John's Episcopal Church, a faculty member of UAB went to Twitter encouraging people to topple a local monument she deemed a racist insult. If you go on Amazon and you search books on anarchy or Antifa, they are widely, vastly praised by members of the academy. So now what we're doing is we're not just teaching them how to go out and be little social justice warriors. We have people teaching who are actively involved in it. So my big question is, education irredeemable? Is there a way for individuals who are of the same perspective you and I are, which is to say true liberal-minded, open-minded conservatives who are still capable of holding other ideas, hearing other perspectives? Is it still a place for individuals like us?
Well, I'm an optimist and I'm a Christian, so I never think anything is irredeemable. I think the question is what's our best strategy, right?
Yes.
And I've been thinking lately, we are the new dissidents, right? I
Yes.
spent a lot of time in Central and Eastern Europe, and I've thought a lot about the dissidents there, but I've also thought a lot about our Pilgrim and separatist forefathers who came from England, in the 1500s, right, when that movement was building up. People basically had to, the minority who didn't like what was happening, they would have to gather in their houses and they would study pamphlets and they would have conversations. What is the meaning of grace? What is the role of God's will, right? These kinds of very intense conversations. And I feel like that's where we are again now, right?
Yes.
We're having, we are having to have private conversations. I sometimes, like, when I think about the webinars that we do at Heritage and posting these, and I sometimes feel like I almost have to do this in secret because I don't want the other side to know, because I'm afraid they'll bomb it, right? They'll mess it up for us. So we're almost having to operate in secret. But I think, again, I'm thinking about Abraham Lincoln expressed concern that the generation of the founders was basically gone. They had died out. So you didn't have the living memory of the founders to educate the next Americans. And he understood, because of that, the importance of going back to the founding documents. Going back, he for him, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution were the touchstone. And I think we're back there, right? I think those of us who understand these things, we know. And I just think we need to share that knowledge, widen the circle of people we're talking to. Even all of us who had the benefit of a decent civics education in 4th grade, 8th grade, whatever, we need to go back. We need to, reread the founding documents and be reminded why America is the way it is. Why did our founders create it? And then we need to step out of our comfort zone and go out and defend this republic.